Okay, let's graph this function along with its inverse function and along with the line y equals x. The function is g of x equals 8x cubed minus 7, and we can replace g of x with y as we're plotting our xy points. I've calculated a few points on the graph of g by simply substituting in x equal -2 into the equation defining g and working it out. That comes out to -71. And so on, evaluating g at -1, g at 0, g at 1, g at 2. I found each of the resulting y values. So I found a total of 5 points on the graph of g. Now, for the graph of g inverse, we don't even need to find the inverse function. If these points are all on the graph of g, then for g inverse, all we need to do are switch all the x and y coordinates of every pair. And so we have -71 and -2. We have -15 and -1. We have -7 and 0 here, 1, 1. And 57 and 2. So those are all the points on the graph of the inverse function g. So let's try to graph the two functions. This is going to be tricky. Okay. Well, tricky to find the right exact points on this whiteboard, but anyway, the two extremes, we have to go down to -71. So let's make this 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Oops. I guess I've got to make a slightly more smaller scale than that. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. That's -70. So -2, we need to do that on the x-axis and on the y-axis. So that's -10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So to begin with, -2, -71 is -2, -71 is just about there. -1 and -15 is going to be -10 is that's right about here, very close to the y-axis there. 0, -7 is right about here. Remember, this is -10, so -7 it's right there on the axis. And then 1, 1 is right. 1, 1 is hard to even find on this graph. Then 2, 57. So if I go over, this is a whole 10 right here. So 2, we're going up to 57. Let's say that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So if we go over 2, we go up to way up here. So the graph of this function looks very steep indeed. And then it does a little zigzag ever so subtly. It looks almost vertical, but it isn't. That's the graph of the function g. The line y equals x I'll graph in red. That's pretty easy. That's the diagonal line where you go over the same amount that you go up, and you'll get the diagonal line y equals x. Here it is. Now for the graph of g inverse. G inverse, we go -71 and -2. I'll do this one in blue. Boy, that's way down here. Just a little bit under the, just slightly under the x-axis. That's -71 and then -2. It's hard to even graph. Anyway, then -15, -1 that's like right even closer to the x-axis. 0, -7 is on the x-axis and right about here. Now we're right on the x-axis. And then 1, 1 is the same point, right, that we went through there, the same exact point the other curve went through, and the line y equals x goes through, all three go through that same point at 1, 1. Then at 2 we have to go, let's see, then 57, comma 2. So go all the way over to 57, that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So 57 and up 2 is right about here. So again, this one is almost horizontal. It's very, then it does a little zigzag here, goes below the x-axis, ever so subtly below the x-axis. And that's the graph of G inverse. So there we have both their graphs and the line y equals x all on the same plot.